Let's do this, man. We're gonna move into the village council, and I've started with Rhuidean because I want it's a big focus of this batch of chapters. And actually, you're gonna see when we get into this, we're gonna spend a significant portion talking about Rhuidean. So this is kind of just an intro, a setup to where we are and really what it is. So it is a city in the Aiel waste built by the Aiel sometime after the breaking of the world, but before the Trolloc Wars. It was a large, unpopulated city. It's smaller than Tyr and Camelin, and the buildings are majestic. There's palaces. There are towers, right? And actually, a lot of what is discussed in the book series leading up to this is like when people would have a dream or a vision, or they would say that they saw a city in the clouds or a city in the waste. They would go, "There is no such thing. That's not real." And this is almost like when it so stands out from everything else. Like everything else is just barren and hard to find water and everything, and then you come across the city of Rhuidean, and boom, there it is. It's got these big old towers, and some of them seem unfinished, or maybe, yeah, like they had started it and they didn't finish the it's like all the towers, or maybe some of them, I don't know, maybe something else happened. I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that, but yeah, there's a plaza in the center. Right, and the city is filled with hundreds of objects of the one power. Hundreds of objects. Yes, and those last episode we were talking about Saw Ungrial, Tyr Ungrial, and these objects of power, things that were created by the power that either helped you channel more of it, that amplified the volume in which a channeler could draw upon the one power, or a Tyr Ungrial, which would be something that anyone could use. You could just touch, you could enter, you could use it. It had like a purpose. There's something that you could do with it. You could move objects. You could do something special with it, and that was a Tyr Ungrial that you didn't have to be a channeler to use, but it was created by the one power, which gave it extra kind of abilities and things. So those are the objects of power that you find in this city. And it is a sacred city that is very precious to the Aiel. So after the breaking of the world, the Aiel, like all people, wander the land looking for safe refuge. And we're gonna get into that. That is literally what this whole batch of chapters is about. So we'll go into greater detail on the Aiel and what happened to them from the breaking of the world until now. We will go through 8 visions. I think it's 8. Yeah, 8 visions that Rand has while in this city about these people and what happened to them. But yeah, they eventually come to what is known as the Threefold Land. And it's here where they bring a lot of these objects these objects of power were entrusted to them by Aes Sedai. And so then they bring them here to this city, and this is where they're going to keep them. They're going to keep them sacred. So yeah. And we'll go into what happened to all of them and why how the city is used now is that if you're a Aiel clan chief, you will go visit the city and you will go through the Tyr Ungrial. You will go through these crystal kind of archways, and it's almost like a crystal forest in which you will experience visions about the past, it's almost like a true telling. It's like a memory of the Aiel. It causes you to go back in time. You step forward through it, and you're carried back in time. And the more you walk through it, when you get to the end, if you get all the way through, which some people don't make it, some people die because they can't handle what they are experiencing in this city. The ones who make it through, they come out on the other end, and they are clan chiefs. They then understand the Aiel people, where they came from, what their purpose is, why they built this city, what they were tasked to do by the Aes Sedai, and then they can kind of govern with that in mind, if that makes sense. So, yeah, it's a sacred city. I mean, it's I guess for those of you who are really kind of first coming across this, and if this is your first time through, Matt, what is it like to experience this place? It's kind of a strange, mysterious city.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And I love to pull up my map. I love to pull up my map because I feel like because in this series we travel a lot of times through way gates and things like that, and so we're over here, and the next thing you know, we're on the complete other side of the world. And when I'm looking at the map and I'm seeing, this is on the Aiel Waste, right, which there's pretty much nothing, or we just don't know really what's out there. And I'm looking at the picture of it here in the wiki. I mean, it looks like a big city. I mean, it looks like it's kind of hard to believe, honestly, that there is a city out here when what we're told about the Aiel Waste. The Aiel Waste does not sound like a place where there would be some sort of like big magical city. It sounds more like an enormous desert of nothing. And here you go. We have this place that has a lot of very powerful objects. And as we are learning more about the Aiel and who they are, it's actually kind of a big deal in that, when we first come across them, they seem almost like these more like nomadic tribes. And now we're seeing the city that is pretty big and, again, carries a lot of very powerful magical objects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and the Aiel people also are just so interesting in their social structure, right? And how they're set up, and then the way they're these hardened people. And then you have these objects that as soon as you hear about them, they seem almost vulnerable out here, right? But then you think about, nobody goes into the waste. It's harsh. It's hard to get to. And the Aiel people, these warriors, would never let you near it. I mean, there's just no way. So yeah, I like what you're saying is that it's kind of, you look at it on the map and it's way out there. You've even heard about, there's been rumor already about the Aiel War and why Rhuidean could or could not cross the waste, and who could and who couldn't, and who is safe to travel across it and who is not. I mean, it's just, so it seems like it's wide open and it's out there where anybody could go access these objects of power, but it's not at the same time because of the terrain, because of the people who surround it and their fierceness, that it's actually safe. And I guess I want to bring up one more point while we're on Rhuidean here, is that the Gen Aiel, and we're going to get into who they are just a little bit later, but the items of power that they had sworn to protect long ago and they left behind, they're scattered in the central plaza. They are the things that were in the wagons that they were carrying, and they were protected by other Aiel, which we can talk about. The Aiel, the people, they split so many different times. That's why there's these 8 visions that talk about they're breaking, essentially. The world is breaking, but the Deshane Aiel are also kind of like breaking apart and creating these other subgroups among their people. And it's the Gen Aiel who try to stay the most faithful and keep to and promise the promise to protect these things, and the other Aiel also kind of protect them, but also don't really interact with them. And when the Gen Aiel finally die out, the warrior group that is surrounding them, the Gen Aiel did not practice the way of this warrior way or wield a spear or anything. They were very still holding to like the way of the leaf and protecting, keeping a promise to ancient Aes Sedai. But when they do die out, it's the Aes Sedai will actually visit the wise ones and make sure that they set up this system, as I talked about earlier, the clan chiefs coming in, the prophecy of Rhuidean, and keeping the system where in which the memory of that promise and the sacredness of the city and what maybe is to come is kept alive through the wise ones and through the clan chiefs. So that's important, I guess, to kind of keep in mind. Rand is going as essentially, as we find out in these chapters, he's coming to fulfill the Kara Khan prophecy, where he's going to be the chief of chiefs. He's going to be the chief over all other clans, and will try to unite the clans. The clans are there's a lot of fighting, there's blood feuds and different things like that among them. They war among themselves, and he's going to try to unite them because the prophecies of the dragon kind of say that he needs to. So, yeah. It's a lot. There's a lot to go over in this batch of chapters. So that's just Rhuidean in a nutshell. We'll go into more of it here. We're gonna get real into it. We're gonna go back in time. So let's first talk about how we get there, though. So let's jump into the reread, Matt, and let's talk about how we get from Tyr, to the waste.